Minho stood before the floor-to-ceiling window of the Coalition embassy, watching ships of 100 different designs drift through the star-filled void. His reflection stared back at him, a man who looked far too ordinary for what he was about to do. In 3 hours, he would marry an alien queen. Not just any alien, but Queen Valera of the Veshan Empire, a being whose species had conquered 12 star systems before humans even invented the wheel. The door hissed open behind him. Doyan entered, carrying a formal diplomatic uniform on a hanger. His friend's face was tight with worry. "You can still back out," Doyan said quietly. "Nobody would blame you." "This is insane." Minho turned from the window. "The Coalition chose me for a reason. If this marriage can prevent a war and save an entire civilization, then it's worth it. Worth dying for?" Dayan set the uniform down with more force than necessary. "The Vishans have rituals, Minho. Dangerous ones. Their males don't always survive the bonding process. And you're not even Veshan. You're human. Your biology is completely different. I know the risks." Minho had read every report, watched every recording available about Vishan culture. The insectoid race was nothing like humanity. They communicated through pheromones and sounds humans couldn't even hear without special equipment. Their queens ruled absolutely, their decisions affecting billions of lives across their empire. And now, their entire species faced extinction. The genetic bottleneck had appeared 50 years ago. Veshan queens could no longer produce viable offspring with their own kind. Scientists across the galaxy had tried to help, but nothing worked. Queen Valera's proposal had shocked the entire Galactic Coalition. She would marry someone from another species, creating an alliance that might somehow save her people. It was unprecedented. It was desperate. And it was the only hope the Veshans had left. The Coalition had debated for months. Before selecting Minho as a cultural liaison, he had worked with 17 different alien species. He spoke 9 languages, understood 32 different social structures, and had a reputation for solving impossible diplomatic problems. But none of that prepared him for this. "The wedding is just the beginning," Doyan continued. 7 days later comes the night of ritual. That's when the real test happens. Every royal consort has to undergo it. Most Veshan males barely survive, and they're built for it. What do you think will happen to a human? Minho had no answer. The truth was, nobody knew. The ritual had never been attempted with an alien before. He would be the first. He might also be the last. 2 hours later, Minho walked through the massive halls of the Veshan flagship. The walls were made of some material that looked like polished chitin, gleaming black with streaks of deep purple. Veshan guards stood at attention, their multiple limbs perfectly still, their compound eyes tracking his movement. They were beautiful in a terrifying way, creatures of perfect evolutionary design. The ceremony hall was enormous. Thousands of Veshans filled the space, their chittering voices creating a sound like wind through crystal caves. At the far end, on a platform that seemed carved from a single massive gemstone, Queen Valera waited. Minho's breath caught. She was larger than any Veshan he had seen, nearly 3 meters tall, her carapace a deep midnight blue that reflected the light in rainbow patterns. 4 arms, each ending in delicate blade-like fingers. Her head was elegant and alien, with sweeping curves and those same compound eyes that seemed to look everywhere at once. A crown of crystalline structures grew naturally from her skull, marking her as royalty. She watched him approach with an expression he couldn't read. Did the Veshans even have expressions humans could understand? The ceremony was mercifully brief. Words were spoken in Veshan, translated through the device in Minho's ear. He repeated vows he had memorized, promises to honor the alliance, to stand beside the queen, to face whatever challenges came. Valera's responses were formal, cold even. This was politics, not romance. a transaction to save her species. When it ended, they stood side by side as the Veshan crowd erupted in sounds that might have been celebration. Minho felt very small next to Valera, very fragile. One of her arms moved, and he forced himself not to flinch. Her hand rested briefly on his shoulder, the touch surprisingly gentle. "You are brave," she said, her voice like wind chimes and breaking glass, beautiful and strange. "Or foolish. The night of ritual will reveal which." Then she was moving away, surrounded by her guards and advisors, leaving Minho standing alone on the platform. He had just married an alien queen, and she had already dismissed him. The next 6 days blurred together. Minho was given quarters in the palace on the Veshan homeworld, a place of impossible architecture where rooms seemed to grow organically from the walls. He was fed strange foods that tasted of metals and flowers. He wore clothing that shifted colors based on his body temperature. And he studied, constantly, trying to understand the people he was now bound to. Yuna helped more than anyone. The human xenobiologist had been stationed on the Veshan homeworld for 5 years, longer than any other human. She came to his quarters on the second day, carrying data pads and a bottle of something that tasted almost like coffee. "You need to understand what you're walking into," she said without preamble. "The night of ritual isn't just ceremonial. It's biological. They'll introduce a symbiote into your system. It's supposed to create a neural link between you and Valera, connecting your minds." Minho set down his cup. "A mind link? With the queen?" "With the hive mind, technically. All Veshans are connected to some degree, but the royal family shares a deeper bond. If you survive the integration, you'll be part of that bond. You'll feel what Valera feels, think what she thinks. And you have access to your mind, too. And if I don't survive?" Yuna didn't answer immediately. "The symbiote is designed for Vishan neurology. Your brain is completely different. It might adapt. It might not. There's no way to know until it happens." On the 7th day, Minho received a summons to the Queen's private chambers. He had barely seen Valera since the wedding, just distant glimpses during formal functions. Now, he stood in a room that seemed carved from living crystal, watching as the Queen dismissed her attendants. When they were alone, Valera turned to face him. "Tonight is the night of ritual," she said. "You may still refuse. I would grant you safe passage back to your people. No dishonor would come to you." Minho studied her alien face, trying to find some hint of what she was thinking. "And what would happen to you? To your people?" Something flickered in her compound eyes. "My empire would continue its slow death. I would be remembered as the queen who failed her species. But that is not your burden to carry." "I gave my word," Minho said quietly. "I'll face the ritual." For the first time, Valera stepped closer to him. One of her hands reached out, hovering near his face, but not touching. "You are not what I expected," she said softly. "Most species view this as an opportunity for power. But you actually care, don't you? About people you've never met, a civilization you don't even fully understand. Isn't that what diplomacy means?" Minho asked. "Finding connections between different people? Building bridges instead of walls?" Valera's hand finally touched his cheek, so gentle it barely registered. "Perhaps humans are more remarkable than we believed. I hope you survive, Minho. Not for the Alliance. Not for my people. I hope you survive because the galaxy needs more beings like you." Then she was gone, leaving Minho alone with his thoughts and the knowledge that in a few short hours, everything would change. He would either become something new, something that had never existed before, or he would die trying. There was no middle ground, no safe retreat. He had made his choice. Now he had to live with it. Or die with it. The Vishan Palace was like walking through the inside of a living creature. Walls curved and flowed in organic patterns. Rooms connected through passages that seemed to pulse with faint light. Minho had been there for 3 days now, and he still got lost regularly. The palace guards had stopped looking surprised when they found him wandering this wrong corridor. He missed Earth. He missed simple right angles and doors that looked like doors. He missed food that didn't taste like it was challenging him to a fight. Most of all, he missed being able to understand the people around him. The Veshans communicated in ways his human senses couldn't fully process. They released chemical signals, scents that carried complex meanings. They made sounds below and above human hearing range. The translator device in his ear helped, converting their speech into words he could understand. But it was like watching a movie with half the screen blacked out. He was missing so much context, so many layers of meaning. On the 4th day, Yuna arrived at his quarters earlier than usual. She looked worried, which wasn't reassuring since Yuna rarely looked worried about anything. She had spent 5 years studying the most dangerous species in the known galaxy, and usually acted like it was no more stressful than watching plants grow. "We need to talk about the ritual," she said, pulling up a holographic display. Images appeared in the air, showing Veshan anatomy, neural pathways, and something that looked like a glowing worm. This is the bonding symbiote. It's actually a colony of billions of microscopic organisms that work together. During the ritual, they'll introduce it into your bloodstream. Minho stared at the image. "That goes inside me? It integrates with your nervous system. For Veshans, it creates a permanent neural link with the Queen's hive mind. Think of it like adding yourself to a network. You become part of the collective consciousness while still maintaining your individual identity." Yuna zoomed in on the image. "The problem is, this symbiote evolved specifically for Veshan biology. Their neurons are structured differently than yours. Their brain chemistry is completely alien. So what happens when it enters a human?" Yuna's expression was grim. "Honestly, we don't know. The symbiote might try to adapt your neural structure to match Vishan patterns. That would be ... painful, possibly fatal. Your brain might reject it entirely, which would definitely be fatal. Or, in the best-case scenario, it might successfully integrate, but there's no telling what the connection would be like or if it would work the way it's supposed to." Minho walked to the window. Outside, he could see the Veshan capital city spreading across the landscape like a giant work of art. Spires of crystalline material rose toward the sky, connected by bridges that seemed to defy gravity. Flying creatures that might have been Veshan, or might have been just animals moved between the buildings. It was beautiful and completely alien. "There's something else," Yuna continued. "I've been researching the history of these rituals. Most royal consorts don't survive. The ones who do are forever changed. They stop being fully themselves. The hive mind is too powerful. It overwhelms individual identity. Valera said I could refuse. And you should." Yuna stood beside him at the window. "Minho, you're my friend. I don't want to watch you die, or worse, watch you become something else. Some empty shell walking around with your face." Before Minho could respond, a Veshan appeared in the doorway. It was Lady Kethris, one of Valera's senior advisors. She was slightly smaller than the Queen, but carried herself with obvious authority. Her carapace was a deep green, and her eyes fixed on Minho with clear disdain. "The Queen requests your presence," she said through the translator. Though her tone suggested, she thought it was a waste of everyone's time. Yuna gave Minho a meaningful look before leaving. Lady Kethris led him through the palace, her multiple limbs moving in perfect coordination. She didn't speak, which suited Minho fine. He could feel her disapproval radiating off her like heat from a fire. They arrived at a garden, though calling it a garden barely captured what it was. Plants that looked like they were made of glass and metal grew in intricate patterns. Water flowed upward in defiance of gravity. The air smelled of ozone and flowers. And in the center of it all, Queen Valera sat on a bench that had grown organically from the ground. She looked different here, somehow smaller and more tired. Her crown of crystalline structures caught the light, scattering rainbows across the garden. She dismissed Lady Kethris with a gesture and indicated that Minho should sit beside her. "I come here to think," Valera said quietly. "This garden was planted by my mother, and her mother before her. 7 generations of queens have tended these plants. I may be the last." Minho didn't know what to say to that. The weight of an entire civilization's extinction seemed too heavy for words. "I have ruled for 30 years, Valera continued. "I have made difficult decisions. I have sent soldiers to war. I have negotiated peace treaties. I have watched my people struggle and suffer, and I have done everything in my power to help them. But this," she gestured vaguely at nothing, "this failure is mine alone. The genetic collapse happened on my watch. I am the queen who cannot produce an heir, who cannot save her species." "It's not your fault," Minho said. "You didn't cause this. Leadership is not about fault. It is about responsibility." Valera's voice carried a deep sadness. "Tell me, Minho, why did you agree to this marriage? Was it ambition? Did your government promise you power or wealth?" "No," Minho said honestly. "They asked if I would do it. I said yes because someone needed to, and I had the skills to at least try." Valera turned to look at him directly. "You are willing to die for people you do not know? For a species you barely understand? Isn't that what you do every day? Make decisions that affect billions of lives? Carry burdens nobody else can carry?" Minho met her alien gaze. "We're not so different. You and I, we both care about others more than ourselves." For a long moment, Valera was silent. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. It was a strange sound, like wind chimes mixed with breaking glass, but it was definitely laughter. "Perhaps you are right. Perhaps that is why I find myself hoping you survive, even though it would be easier if you simply refused the ritual." "Easier for who?" "For me. If you die tomorrow night, I will have killed you. That weight will be mine to carry along with all the others." Valera stood, her full height towering over him. "But if you survive, if this impossible bond actually works, then everything changes. Not just for my people, but for the entire galaxy. You would prove that species can merge in ways we never imagined possible." Over the next few days, Minho spent more time with Valera. She showed him the palace, explained Veshan history, taught him to recognize the subtle changes in carapace color that indicated emotion. He, in turn, told her about Earth, about human cultures, about the messy, complicated way his species tried to coexist with each other. He learned that Veshans valued efficiency and clarity above almost everything else. Deception was considered the highest crime. Direct confrontation was respected, even when disagreements were harsh. And loyalty to the hive, to the collective good, was the foundation of their entire society. But he also learned that they experienced loneliness, fear, and hope just like humans did. Valera, despite being connected to a hive mind, was the loneliest person Minho had ever met. The weight of leadership isolated her even from her own people. On the 6th day, Minho's brother Tai Yang called via quantum communication. His face appeared in holographic form, worry evident in every line. "Come home," Tai Yang said without preamble. "This is insane. You're going to die for political theater. It's not theater. These people need help. They're not people, Minho. They're aliens. Bugs. Why should you sacrifice yourself for them?" Minho felt a flash of anger. They're people. They think, they feel, they love their families, and fear for their future. Just because they don't look like us doesn't make them less worthy of help. And if the ritual kills you? What then? Then I tried. That's more than most people can say. Minho took a breath, calming himself. I need to do this, Tien. Not for politics. Not for the coalition. I need to do this because it's right. His brother's hologram flickered. You always were too good for your own good. I love you, little brother. Come back alive. The night before the ritual, Minho couldn't sleep. He stood in his quarters, watching the alien stars through the window, thinking about everything that had led him here. A poor kid from Earth who loved learning languages. A diplomat who believed different species could understand each other. A human who had married an alien queen and somehow started to care about her. That was the truth he had been avoiding. He cared about Valera, not because she was beautiful, though in her alien way she was. Not because she was powerful, though she commanded legions. He cared because she was carrying an impossible burden with grace and dignity, trying to save her people, even if it meant sacrificing her own happiness. Tomorrow night, he would either help her or die trying. There was no other option. He had given his word, and more than that, he had found something worth fighting for. A connection across the void between species. A bridge built from hope and desperation. He just hoped he was strong enough to survive walking across it. The sacred chamber existed deep beneath the palace, in tunnels that had been carved thousands of years before humans even discovered fire. Minho descended through passages of polished stone, flanked by silent Beshan guards. The air grew warmer as they went deeper, carrying scents he couldn't identify. His heart hammered against his ribs, but he kept his breathing steady. Fear was acceptable. Panic was not. The chamber itself took his breath away. It was enormous, a cavern that must have been natural, but had been shaped over centuries into something extraordinary. The walls were covered in intricate carvings showing the history of the Veshan people. Bioluminescent fungi created patterns of light across the ceiling like stars. And in the center, a raised platform of black stone waited for him. Thousands of Veshans filled the space, their bodies creating a sea of chitinous forms in every color imaginable. The sound of their breathing, their movement, their chittering voices created a noise like an ocean. They had come to witness history. They had come to watch a human either join their collective consciousness or die trying. Valera stood beside the platform, wearing ceremonial armor that seemed to be made of living metal. She looked like a goddess from some ancient mythology, powerful and terrible and beautiful. When she saw Minho, something flickered in her compound eyes. Worry, maybe. Or regret. Lady Kethra stood nearby, her green carapace gleaming in the fungal light. She made no effort to hide her satisfaction. To her, Minho was an intruder, a weak alien who had no place among the Veshan royal family. She expected him to fail. She wanted him to fail. You may still refuse, Valera said, her voice carrying across the chamber through some acoustic trick of the architecture. No shame will come to you if you choose life over this. Minho climbed onto the platform. His legs felt steady, which surprised him. I'm ready. You understand what will happen? The symbiote will enter your bloodstream. It will attempt to integrate with your neural pathways. The pain will be intense. If your body rejects it, death will be quick. If it tries to force integration, death will be slower, but no less certain. And if it succeeds, Valera paused. If it succeeds, you will no longer be fully yourself. Part of you will always belong to the hive, to me. I understand, Minho said. He did, intellectually at least. But understanding something and experiencing it were very different things. Valera gestured, and 3 Vishan priests approached. They carried a container made of crystal, inside which something glowed with a soft blue light. The symbiote, It looked beautiful, like a living constellation. Minho watched it pulse and swirl inside its container, aware that in moments, that thing would be inside him, rewriting the fundamental structure of his brain. The priests began to chant in ancient Theshan, words that the translator couldn't process. The crowd joined in, thousands of voices creating a sound that resonated in Minho's chest. He felt the vibration of it in his bones. One of the priests opened the container. The symbiote flowed out like liquid light, hovering in the air for a moment. Then it moved toward Minho with sudden, terrible purpose. He forced himself not to flinch as it touched his arm. The sensation was cold at first, then burning hot. It sank into his skin like water into sand, disappearing beneath the surface. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the pain began. It felt like lightning in his veins. The symbiote spread through his bloodstream, tiny organisms racing toward his brain. Minho gasped, his knees buckling. Valera caught him with surprising gentleness, lowering him to the platform. "Breathe," she said. "Focus on breathing." But breathing was becoming difficult. The symbiote had reached his brain, and it was trying to do what it had evolved to do, reshape neural pathways to match Theshan patterns. Except Minho's brain wasn't Theshan. His neurons were structured differently. His synapses fired in different patterns. His entire consciousness operated on principles that were fundamentally alien to the SYMBIOTE. The organism didn't understand this. It kept trying to force the connection, and every attempt felt like a knife through Minho's skull. He heard himself screaming, but couldn't stop. His vision went white, then red, then black. He was dying. He knew he was dying. In the crowd, Lady Kethris smiled, but then something changed. The symbiote paused its assault, as if confused. Human brains had one feature that made them unique in the galaxy, something that had allowed humanity to survive ice ages and plagues and wars. Neuroplasticity, the ability to adapt, to rewire, to change in response to new challenges. Minho's brain started to adapt to the symbiote instead of the other way around. New neural pathways formed, not replacing his human structure, but building on top of it. The pain didn't stop, but its nature changed. It became focused, purposeful, and then he felt it. A presence at the edge of his consciousness. Valera. He could sense her like a bright star in darkness. Her thoughts, her emotions, her vast and terrible loneliness, all of it flooded into him. But something else happened too, something that had never occurred in thousands of years of Theshan rituals. Valera gasped, staggering backward, because she could feel him too. Not as a distant presence in her hive mind, not as a submissive consort who fed her information. She felt his thoughts as clearly as her own, experienced his emotions with full intensity. For the first time in Theshan history, the bond was flowing both ways. Minho felt Valera's surprise, her fear, her wonder. He felt the weight she carried, the responsibility for billions of lives. He felt her deep, aching loneliness, the isolation of being a queen who could never truly connect with anyone as an equal. He felt her hope, desperate and fragile, that maybe this human could be different. And Valera felt Minho's determination, his genuine care for her people, despite barely knowing them. She felt his fear of death, his worry that he wasn't strong enough for this. But more than anything, she felt his compassion. He had agreed to this ritual not for power or glory, but because he saw beings in need and couldn't walk away. He saw her as a person, not just a queen. He saw her pain and wanted to help carry it. The symbiote settled, completing the integration. Minho's eyes opened, though he hadn't realized they were closed. He was still on the platform, still in the sacred chamber. But everything was different. He could feel the presence of every Theshan in the room, like distant lights in his consciousness. And Valera, she was bright as the sun, so close she might as well be part of him. The crowd had gone silent. They could sense that something unprecedented had just happened. Minho stood on shaky legs. Valera stared at him with something like awe. Through their bond, he felt her trying to process what had just occurred. She could feel a human mind, truly feel it, and it was nothing like she expected. Where Veshan thoughts were precise and ordered, Minho's were chaotic and creative. Where Veshans processed information through logical pathways, humans made intuitive leaps. Where Veshans valued efficiency, humans valued connection. How is this possible? Valera whispered, speaking directly into his mind now. The sensation was intimate in a way Minho hadn't prepared for. I can feel you. Not just sense you, but feel you. Your thoughts, your emotions, everything. Human brains adapt, Minho said aloud, his voice rough. We're good at that. The symbiote couldn't force me to fit its pattern, so it built a bridge between us instead. Lady Kethris stepped forward, her voice sharp. This is wrong. The ritual is supposed to create submission, not equality. He has corrupted the sacred bond. No. Valera's voice rang with absolute authority. He has perfected it. For the first time, I am not alone in my mind. I have a true partner, an equal. Is that not what the bond was always meant to be? Through their connection, Minho felt Valera's emotions churning. Joy, fear, relief, worry, all mixing together in a storm. And beneath it all, something else. Something that felt like the beginning of trust. Or maybe more than trust. He sent her a feeling through the bond, a wordless message of reassurance. They would figure this out together. They had to. The crowd began to chant again, but this time it sounded different to Minho. He could understand some of it now, picking up meaning through his connection to the hive mind. They were witnessing something that would change their entire civilization. A human and a Vishan queen, bonded not through dominance, but through partnership. Lady Kethris looked furious, but there was nothing she could do. The ritual had succeeded. Minho had survived. As the ceremony concluded and the crowds began to disperse, Valera helped Minho from the platform. He was exhausted, every muscle in his body aching, his mind overwhelmed by the constant presence of the hive consciousness. But he was alive. Come, Valera said softly, supporting his weight with two of her arms. You need rest. We both do. Tomorrow, we will begin to understand what this bond truly means. Minho nodded, too tired to speak. As they left the sacred chamber, he could feel Lady Kethris's hostile gaze on his back. The ritual might have succeeded, but he sensed that his trials were far from over. Minho woke to the sensation of someone else's dreams fading from his mind. Not his own dreams, but Valera's. He had experienced her sleeping thoughts, filled with images of dying gardens and empty throne rooms. He felt her fear of failure like it was his own. The mental bond between them never shut off, never gave them privacy. It was intimate and invasive and completely overwhelming. He sat up in his quarters, rubbing his temples. His head ached with the constant presence of the hive mind. Thousands of Vishan minds buzzed at the edge of his consciousness like static on a radio. He could tune most of them out, but Valera was always there, bright and impossible to ignore. Through their bond, he felt her wake up in her own chambers. Felt her moment of surprise at sensing his consciousness active. Felt her sending a wordless greeting, something between a thought and an emotion. Good morning, Minho said aloud, though she wasn't in the room. He knew she could hear him through the bond. You are in pain. Her concern flowed through their connection. The hive consciousness is too much for you. I'll adapt. I'm good at that. Minho stood, stretching sore muscles. His body had survived the integration, but it had been traumatic. He felt like he'd been taken apart and reassembled slightly wrong. A message appeared on his communication device. Yuna wanted to see him immediately. Medical emergency, her note said. He dressed quickly and headed to her laboratory. Yuna's lab was a chaotic space, filled with equipment that mixed human and Veshan technology. She was examining something under a holographic microscope when Minho entered, her face intense with concentration. "You're alive," she said, looking up. "I wasn't sure you would be." "Barely." Minho sat down heavily. "What's the emergency?" Yuna pulled up a display showing complex genetic sequencing. "I've been studying the symbiote in your bloodstream. Minho, it's not just creating a neural link. It's actively modifying your DNA. Your cells are incorporating Veshan genetic material. Is that bad?" "I don't know. It's never happened before. The symbiote and Veshan consorts doesn't alter their genetics. But with you, because your brain had to adapt so dramatically, the changes are spreading to your entire body." Yuna zoomed in on the image. "Your reflexes are faster. Your sensory processing is enhanced. You're becoming something that's never existed before. Part human, part Veshan." Minho looked at his hands. They looked the same, but he could feel the difference. Everything seemed sharper, more vivid. He could hear sounds beyond normal human range now. Could smell pheromones in the air, though he couldn't quite interpret them yet. "There's more," Yuna continued. "If your genetics are becoming compatible with Veshan biology, then Valera might actually be able to produce offspring. We could solve their extinction crisis." Before Minho could respond, an alarm blared through the palace. His connection to the hive mind exploded with panic and fear. Something was wrong. Very wrong. He ran toward the throne room, following the surge of distress through the mental bond. Guards rushed past him. Servants fled in the opposite direction. Through Valera's mind, he felt her sharp spike of danger. The throne room was chaos. Lady Kethris stood in the center with a group of armed Veshans wearing armor Minho didn't recognize. They had surrounded Valera, weapons drawn. "A coup attempt. This abomination cannot stand," Lady Kethris declared, her voice amplified across the room. "Our queen has bound herself to an inferior species, corrupted the sacred ritual, and brought shame upon our entire civilization. She is no longer fit to rule." Valera stood perfectly still, two of her arms raised in a gesture of calm authority. "Stand down, Kethris. This is treason. This is salvation. When you die, a proper queen will take your place. One who understands the Shin purity." Through the bond, Minho felt Valera's cold calculation. She was counting the attackers, measuring distances, calculating odds. She was outnumbered and outgunned. But she wasn't afraid, just grimly resigned to fighting even if it killed her. Minho stepped into the room. Every eye turned to him. Through his enhanced senses, he could smell the pheromones in the air. Fear from Valera's loyal guards. Aggression from the attackers. Smug satisfaction from Lady Kethris. "Kill the human," Kethris ordered. Two attackers moved toward Minho. He didn't think, just reacted. The symbiote had changed him, enhanced him. His reflexes were faster than they should be, his perception sharper. He ducked under the first blade, feeling it pass centimeters from his skull. Rolled past the second attacker, coming up behind them. Through the bond, he felt Valera's surprise at his speed. Felt her sending him information, patterns of movement in the Veshan fighting style. Feeding him knowledge directly through their mental link. He used that knowledge, moving in ways his human training had never taught him. When the next attack came, he was ready for it. He couldn't overpower a Veshan. They were too strong, but he could be faster. More unpredictable, Valera used his distraction to act. She moved like liquid death, her blade-like hands cutting through attackers with precise efficiency. Through their bond, they coordinated without speaking. Minho could sense where she was, what she was doing. She knew his movements before he made them. They fought as one organism, covering each other's weaknesses, amplifying each other's strengths. It was beautiful and terrifying, but there were too many attackers. For every one they defeated, 2 more pressed in. Minho took a blade across his arm, felt the burning pain. Through the bond, Valera felt it too, gasped at the sensation. Then the loyal guards arrived, responding to the alarm. The coup attempt collapsed in moments. The attackers were subdued, disarmed, forced to their knees. Lady Kethris was the last to surrender, her compound eyes fixed on Minho with pure hatred. "You've proven nothing," she hissed. "You're still an inferior creature playing at being Neshin. This bond is unnatural." Minho walked toward her, ignoring the blood running down his arm. "You're right. I'm not Neshin. I'm human. And that's exactly why this works." He gestured to Valera. "She doesn't need another Neshin in her head. She needs someone different. Someone who sees things from a new angle. That's what humans do. We adapt. We connect across differences. We build bridges." Through the bond, he felt Valera's surge of emotion. Pride, gratitude, and something warmer that he didn't have a name for. "Take them to the holding cells," Valera commanded. "Lady Kethris will stand trial for treason." As the guards dragged the conspirators away, Valera approached Minho. One of her hands touched the wound on his arm, her touch gentle. "You fought well. The bond made us strong together." "We make each other strong," Minho corrected. Through their connection, he felt her understanding what he meant. She had spent her entire life carrying burdens alone. Now she had someone who could truly share the weight. Over the following days, the bond between them deepened. They learned to communicate through pure thought, sharing complex ideas in instants. Minho taught Valera about human art and music and literature. She taught him Vishen philosophy and history and culture. They argued, sometimes fiercely, their different perspectives clashing. But they also found common ground in unexpected places. Yuna continued her research, working with Valera's scientists. The genetic compatibility was confirmed. If they chose to, Minho and Valera could produce offspring. The first hybrid child in galactic history. The solution to the Vishen extinction crisis. "What do you think?" Valera asked him one evening. They sat in her private garden, the one her ancestors had planted. "Should we try? Should we bring a child into existence, knowing they will be neither fully human nor fully Vishen?" Minho considered the question. Through the bond, Valera felt his thoughts forming. "I think any child deserves to be loved and wanted, not created just to solve a political problem. And if we wanted them, not for the empire, not for the alliance, but because we wanted to be parents?" Minho looked at her, this alien queen who had become so familiar to him. "Do you want that?" Through the bond, Valera's emotions were complex. Hope and fear and longing all mixed together. "I want to not be the queen who let her species die. But more than that, I want—" She paused, searching for words. "I want what I feel from you. The way you care about people, not because they're useful, but because they exist. I want to give that to a child." "Then yes," Minho said. "Let's try." The announcement sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The Vishen queen and her human consort were attempting to produce an heir. Scientists called it impossible. Politicians called it revolutionary. And across 100 worlds, people watched and waited to see if the impossible could become real. Lady Kethris, awaiting trial in her cell, received the news with cold fury. The human had survived the ritual, had survived the assassination attempt, and now he might actually save the Vishen species. Everything she had fought against was coming true, but she was not finished yet. She still had allies, still had resources. And she would make sure that this unnatural bond between species ended, one way or another. 6 months had passed since the night of ritual. And the galaxy had changed in ways nobody could have predicted. Minho stood in the Galactic Coalition Assembly Hall, watching representatives from 200 species debate the future. His presence there, as the consort to a reigning monarch, had initially caused controversy. Now they listened when he spoke. The reason stood in a secure laboratory back on the Veshan homeworld. A small sphere of developing cells, monitored by the best scientists from a dozen worlds. The first viable hybrid embryo. Proof that different species could merge in ways that went beyond politics or treaties. Through his bond with Valera, Minho felt her presence even across star systems. She was in a council meeting with her advisors, dealing with the economic implications of the new genetic research. He sent her a pulse of support through their connection. She responded with warmth and exhaustion. Being queen never got easier, but at least now she didn't carry the burden alone. Doyan approached, wearing the formal robes of a coalition ambassador. The vote is about to begin. Are you ready? Minho nodded. The coalition was voting on his proposal to establish the Cross-Species Integration Institute, a research and cultural center dedicated to helping species overcome biological and social barriers. It was ambitious, expensive, and completely unprecedented. Some of the older species still think humans are too young to lead something like this, Doyan warned. They remember when we were barely out of our solar system. That's exactly why we should lead it, Minho replied. We're new enough to remember what it's like to be the outsider, to be the species everyone underestimates. The vote was called. Minho watched the display as results came in. Species after species voted in favor. Even some who had initially opposed the Veshan-Human alliance now supported the institute. The final count was overwhelming. The proposal passed. Through the bond, Valera felt his surge of triumph. Congratulations, she sent. You are changing the galaxy, my partner. We are changing it, Minho corrected. Together. He took the first transport back to the Veshan homeworld, eager to share the news in person. The trip through hyperspace gave him time to think about how much his life had changed. 6 months ago, he had been a simple diplomat. Now he was part of an alien hive mind, bonded to a queen, and expecting a child that would be the first of its kind. The palace greeted him with familiar sights and sounds. He could navigate the organic corridors now without getting lost. Could interpret the pheromone signals that filled the air. Could understand the subsonic frequencies of Veshan speech without his translator. He was still human, but he was something more now too. Yuna met him in the medical wing, her face glowing with excitement. The embryo is developing perfectly. It's incorporating both genetic structures in ways we've never seen. The child will have characteristics of both species. Is that safe? We think so. The hybrid genetics seems stable. But Minho, this is just the beginning. If this works, we could help other species facing genetic bottlenecks. The techniques we're developing could save civilizations. Minho looked at the embryo display, watching the cluster of cells that would become his child. Through the bond, he felt Valera approaching. She entered the room, her carapace gleaming, and one of her hands gently touched his shoulder. Our child, she said softly, speaking aloud for Yuna's benefit. The future of 2 species. Just a child, Minho replied. Who deserves to be loved for who they are, not what they represent? Valera's emotions through the bond were complex. Agreement, hope, and a fierce protective love that surprised them both. She had spent so long thinking of children as heirs and symbols. Minho was teaching her to see them as simply children. The next day brought unexpected news. Lady Kethris had requested an audience with Minho and Valera. She was still awaiting trial, still facing charges of treason, but she had information she claimed was vital. They met her in a secure chamber, guards posted at every entrance. Kethris looked diminished somehow, her green carapace dull, her movements lacking their usual confidence. But her eyes still held intelligence and calculation. "I am going to die," she said without preamble. "The trial will end in execution. I accept this. But before I die, I wish to speak truth." "Speak then," Valera commanded. Kethris turned her gaze to Minho. "I hated you. I saw you as weak, inferior, a contamination of Veshan purity. I tried to kill you because I believed you would destroy everything we had built over millennia." "I know," Minho said simply. "But I was wrong." The words seemed to pain Kethris physically. "You saved our queen when I tried to murder her. You created a bond that goes beyond anything our species has achieved. And now you will give us a future we thought was lost forever. I was wrong, and my people will live because of it." Through the bond, Minho felt Valera's surprise. This admission from Kethris was completely unexpected. "Why tell us this?" Valera asked. "Because I have spent my life in service to our empire. Even now, even facing death, I want what is best for our people. And what is best is this." Kethris gestured at Minho and Valera. "This partnership between species. I fought it because I was afraid. Fear made me blind. But I see clearly now. What do you want from us?" Minho asked. "I want you to continue what you have started. Build your institute. Help other species find the bridges you have built. Show the galaxy that difference is not weakness, but strength." Kethris met his eyes. "And I want you to teach that lesson to your child. The first of many bridges between stars." After Kethris was escorted away, Valera stood silent for a long moment. "She was my closest advisor for 20 years. I never expected such words from her." "People can change," Minho said, "even when they think they can't." Through the bond, he felt Valera's agreement, mixed with sadness for what Kethris might have become if fear hadn't ruled her actions. 3 months later, Minho's brother Taiyang arrived with a delegation from Earth. He had been promoted to senior diplomat, partially because of his connection to Minho. They met in the same garden where Minho had first really talked with Valera, among the plants grown by generations of queens. "You look different," Taiyang said, studying him. "Not physically, but there's something in how you move, how you perceive things. The symbiote changed me. I'm still human, but I'm connected to something larger now. It's hard to explain." Taiyang sat on the bench that grew from the ground. "Is it worth it? Giving up part of yourself?" "I didn't give up anything. I gained something. Partnership, purpose, a family that spans species." Minho smiled. "You should meet Valera properly. Not as a queen, but as my partner." The introduction went better than expected. Valera had been practicing human social customs, and Taiyang had studied Vishan protocol. They found common ground discussing art, of all things. Deshan aesthetic principles and human creativity created fascinating conversations. "Take care of my brother," Taiyang said to Valera before leaving. "He's always cared more about others than himself." "I know," Valera replied. "That is why he survived the ritual. That is why he will be a good father. And that is why he is changing the galaxy." 4 months later, the child was born. The delivery was complex, requiring both human and Veshan medical expertise. But when it was done, Minho held his daughter for the first time. She was beautiful in a way that defied either species. Smooth skin in places, delicate carapace patterns in others. Human eyes, but with hints of compound structure. Small, perfect, and completely unique. "What should we name her?" Valera asked, her voice soft with wonder. Through the bond, Minho felt her overwhelming love for this tiny being. "Nari," Minho said. "It means lily in Korean, a flower that grows between land and water, belonging fully to neither, but beautiful in both worlds." Nari, Valera repeated, testing the name. One of her hands touched the baby's tiny fingers. Our daughter. A first, but not the last. Other species are already asking about the process. Other civilizations want to try. Minho rocked Nari gently. Let them try. Let them build bridges. That's what the Institute is for. News of Nari's birth spread across the galaxy within hours. Images of the hybrid child appeared on broadcasts across 100 worlds. Scientists analyzed every detail. Politicians debated the implications. And on countless planets, people who had thought their differences were too great to overcome started to wonder if they were wrong. The Cross-Species Integration Institute opened 6 weeks later, with Minho and Valera as its founding directors. Representatives from 37 different species enrolled in the first programs. They came to learn how to communicate across vast differences, how to find common ground, how to build partnerships that transcended biology. Yuna was appointed head of genetic research. Doyan became the chief diplomatic liaison. Even some of Lady Kethras's former colleagues joined the effort. Their fear transformed into curiosity, and hope. Lady Kethras herself was executed for treason, as expected. But before she died, she left a message for the Institute. In it, she spoke about the danger of fear, the cost of refusing to adapt, and the importance of seeing others as equals rather than threats. Her words became part of the Institute's founding principles. Minho stood in the Institute's central hall 1 year after the night of ritual, holding Nari while Valera gave a speech to gathered delegates. Through their bond, he felt her confidence mixed with nervousness. Public speaking still challenged her, but she was determined to master it. We stand at a moment of transformation, Valera said, her voice amplified across the hall. For too long, species in this galaxy have seen differences as barriers. We have built walls instead of bridges. We have chosen isolation over integration. But look at what is possible when we choose differently. She gestured to Minho and Nari. A human and a Veshan, bonded in ways we thought impossible. A child who carries the future of both species. This is not just about genetics. It is about seeing each other truly. About caring for beings we once thought were too different to understand. Through the bond, Minho sent her encouragement. She felt it and smiled, an expression that still looked alien, but that he had learned to read perfectly. The galaxy is vast and full of wonders, Valera continued. But the greatest wonder is this. We are all more alike than we are different. We all fear, hope, love, and dream. We all carry burdens and seek connections. Species don't determine worth. Hearts do. The hall erupted in sounds of approval, each species expressing it differently. Minho felt the resonance through the bond, felt Valera's deep satisfaction at reaching them. As the ceremony concluded and delegates mingled, Tai Yang approached with a knowing smile. You did it, little brother. You married an alien queen and actually made it work. You changed the galaxy. We changed it, Minho corrected, bouncing Nari gently. Me, Valera, Yuna, you, everyone who chose to build bridges instead of walls. That's how change works, together. Nari made a small sound, something between a human coo and a Veshan chirp. Through the bond, Minho felt Valera's attention focus on their daughter, even from across the room. They were connected in ways that went beyond species, beyond biology. They were family. The future was uncertain. There would be challenges ahead, species who refused to adapt, conflicts over resources and territory, the endless complications of trying to unite a diverse galaxy. But for the first time in Veshan history, Valera faced that future without being alone. For the first time in his life, Minho felt like he belonged to something greater than himself. And across the galaxy, on worlds beyond counting, beings who had thought they were too different to ever understand each other started to wonder, started to hope. started to build their own bridges across the void.